In a pretty big change from my usual content, today I actually have a game review for you. I was actually given access to the Rogue Prince of Persia early by Evil Empire and Ubisoft. Now, before I jump into this, I do want to preface that this video will be marked as sponsored because of so. However, no money was exchanged. They aren't going to be watching this video before it goes up. They have no say in anything that I mention in this video, so if you're concerned about that, don't worry about it. The other thing being, I was given access to a slice of the game, so I don't have full access to the full game that is going to be releasing on May 27th, so keep that in mind as you watch this video, that these things are reflective of what I've played, not of the product that's going to be available for purchase tomorrow. Following in the footsteps of The Lost Crown, the most recent Prince of Persia game, the Rogue Prince of Persia is also a 2D platformer. However, it is a roguelike game this time. And with roguelike means there are multiple weapons, multiple different abilities, and all sorts of things you can mess with, and this game does have all of that. In the version that I played, the game's story isn't too well fleshed out, but the creators have let me know that there's going to be an actual story and more expanding when the game actually releases. But as of this, you're returning from an adventure, and you notice that your town is under attack by the Huns, and the gameplay is you are returning home to save your town. When it comes to the controls and general gameplay, you have a jump, a dodge, a kick, and you have an attack button, as well as the ability to run on walls like you would expect from the most recent Prince of Persia games. You also have access to a sub-weapon. At the start, it's a bow that you can use for long-range attacks, and there are other sub-weapons you can pick up along with other main weapons you can pick up. Things like daggers, spears, and swords all change up how the actual main attack goes, as well as your super attack that you can activate by holding the attack button. That and also other versions of the same weapon include stats like being able to stun, poison, set things on fire, the sort of stuff you'd expect from other roguelikes where it's the same base weapon, but new stuff gets added to it the further you go and the more things you get to mess with. The kick you get access to is very useful for stunning enemies. You can use it to kick enemies into walls, enemies into other enemies, and there's even some enemies that have shields that can only be broken if another enemy is kicked into them. The dodge button is a bit more complex than just a simple sort of dodge roll like you would see in other sort of action RPG games. Instead, this dodge ability actually allows you to flow into more movement and more attacks. You can press the dodge to evade certain things like bombs, and then following up with quick attacks right afterwards, making it to where you avoid damage but also doesn't delay you in continuing your flow of combat. And just like most roguelikes, there's also abilities you can find hidden throughout the levels. These will change things like whether or not you can set things on fire, what certain abilities do, certain down attacks or certain combos and what they do, just various sorts of things. A lot of the ones that I experienced were things like kicking an enemy into a wall will cause a poison cloud to appear, or if you take damage, the area nearby you sets on fire. Stuff like that, and the game allows you to power each up, where if you pair certain abilities, like if you have multiple things that cause poison, they will power up the other things that cause poison. Now how about the actual levels themselves? They've done a pretty good job at emphasizing exploration despite it being a 2D platformer. Like you'd expect, you could just hold right and get to the end of the level, but in most roguelikes, just doing that, just getting straight to the end, is only going to hurt you in the long run. And throughout the levels, there are going to be little teleporters you can use to jump around the levels, and they've used this to emphasize going up or down into secret areas to explore paths that are more branching than just going in a straight line. Exploring these areas will give you access to treasure chests that could hold money, could hold items, abilities, all sorts of things, and you can even find special little challenge rooms that test your abilities in the game to even find even rarer stuff. Along with this, you also have stores and NPCs that are all existing around the levels that you can use to pick up stuff, interact, and learn a little bit more, which, as I mentioned earlier, the story in this version isn't a whole lot, so most of the NPCs that I spoke to just sort of acknowledge that you're the prince and that your kingdom is under attack, and then the prince is like, yep, I'm going there to rescue everybody, and that's just sort of it. When it comes to a few gripes that I have, the main one is that certain enemies in this game are solely designed that you want to use your sub-weapon like the bow. There's going to be little poles that you can normally vault off of yourself, but there are enemies that are going to be sometimes perched on them, and if you get too close, they can swing and attack at you, and it's pretty fast. They attack you pretty quickly to where you can't even really use your normal attack to fight back. You're intended to use your sub-weapon from a distance. However, just sometimes you may find yourself jumping around and then you just get sniped by one of them, and that's a little bit frustrating. The other thing is there are going to be interactables, things like NPCs, stores, chests, things like that, that you have to press up on the D-pad to interact with. Now, this game does use the analog stick for movement, but up on the analog stick isn't used for interacting. You have to lift your hand off the analog stick to touch the D-pad to interact with these things. And that's just a small gripe. I understand that there's probably a reason that, with the wall running, you use up on the control stick to control the wall running, so they probably didn't want to have the interact button also be holding up, because you may try to be climbing up a wall and then interact with something you didn't mean to. But that's just another gripe I have, where you just gotta move your hand, and that's, small little gripe. Now, when your run inevitably comes to the end and you die, you return to a camp where the prince was resting at just before returning home. So you basically go back in time, and it's not really explained a whole lot, but again, the story is going to be fleshed out when the full thing is there. But this gives you a chance to set up camp, talk to some NPCs, and purchase some items to start your next run with, using some items that you pick up through killing enemies or finding them in chests during your runs themselves. Overall, the game is pretty fun. The wall running is pretty exciting to mess with. I have found myself mistaking dodge and jump quite a bit, where I mean to dodge, but then I jump, and then I take damage, and then I feel stupid. Just stuff like that. That's mostly just a thing. It's a skill issue, but the general gameplay and how everything flows is pretty fun. The exploration is done pretty well for a 2D game. The roguelike elements, while very minimal in the experience that I played, I'm definitely interested to see how they're going to expand to it when the full game comes out tomorrow. And that's another thing. The game is going to be probably quite different just from tomorrow, and probably even more so 6 months from now. So there will likely be a follow-up video to this, where after the game has come out and I've played a bit more of it, I'll give more detail into how I feel about the game post-launch, but this video is purely on the experience I got access to, and from this, I definitely say that I am really interested in checking out more. I will leave a link to the Steam page in the description if you haven't seen it yourself, but it is definitely, just from what I've played, it is something that I'm definitely interested in checking out, and would suggest those that are interested in roguelikes, or even those who really liked The Lost Crown, the most recent Prince of Persia game, to check it out. But without all that said, I want to thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.